Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation, Transforming Culture with Engagement Insights, a Tactical Guide and Case Study. This event is part of SHRM's webcast series. You can learn more about upcoming and on-demand programs at shrm.org/webcast and from SHRM's e-newsletters, including HR Daily and HR Week. SHRM thanks today's program sponsor, Glint, for helping make this webcast available to the HR community. Today's program will provide a look into JDRF, an organization whose mission is to create a world without type 1 diabetes, and an organization that recently underwent a complete culture transformation. To lead this discussion, we are pleased to welcome Madhuri Kumar from JDRF. Ms. Kumar is an Associate Vice President of Talent Development at JDRF. She is an organization effectiveness professional with a more than 15-year track record of delivering high-value strategic business results across a broad spectrum of human capital challenges in varied and complex organization cultures. Her team is a strategic partner to the business through a focus on people and culture. Having worked in various sectors, higher education, corporate, and now nonprofit, Ms. Kumar is a perpetual student of organizational behavior, human performance, and cultural evolution. With introductions complete, I'll now turn over the webcasting microphone to Madhuri. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you so much. What an opportunity. My gratitude to both SHRM and Glint for this invitation to share our story today. It's truly an honor. Hi, everyone on the call. Welcome to this conversation. Thank you for the time you're investing in this today. And I'm hoping you can take back at least a couple of nuggets that will inform your own work that you are involved in. The way I've structured the story today is truly in two parts. In the first, I want to introduce you to JDRF. And in the second, I want to share our employee engagement and culture change journey with you. As Taylor mentioned, we'll have a Q&A at the end, so I'm looking forward to your questions and learning from you at the end. So let's get after it, shall we? So here's a quick video to introduce you to JDRF. It's a really brief 1-minute video. Enjoy.
We're the stronger than we look type, the braver than you think type, the type that sees the odds and says they're meant to be overcome. We're the progress is inevitable type, the rise to every challenge type, the type that knows bit by bit the future is certain to get better. We're the plan for a cure type, the improve life along the way type, the type that will stop at nothing, absolutely nothing, until type 1 becomes type none.
You're getting a sense, right, from this video, who we are. JDRF is a leading global organization funding type 1 diabetes research. Our goal is to eventually cure and prevent T1D entirely. However, along the way to the cure, we are also investing in driving scientific progress that delivers new treatments and therapies that are intended to make the day-to-day life of T1D easier, safer, and healthier. Some quick background statistics on T1D. A quick look at the numbers on the screen tells you that T1D is a growing public health concern. It affects over 1 million Americans of all ages. And the rate of new people being diagnosed with T1D continues to rise. The facts and figures on this slide help demonstrate that the need to find a cure for T1D is urgent, and we need to continue developing treatments to ease the daily burden until we find that cure. So to give you a sense of how we are actually approaching this, The 750 JDRF staff and thousands of volunteers across the United States and in affiliates around the world share an unrelenting passion and commitment to greatly easing the burden of type 1 diabetes with people's lives until we find a prevention and cure. We as an organization are built on a grassroots model. This means people connecting in their local communities, collaborating regionally for broader fundraising impact, and then uniting at the national stage to pool resources, the passion, and the energy it's going to take to find that cure. To give you a sense of what we're focusing on today, first is the cure itself. This means to restore the body's normal glucose control and eliminate all requirements for insulin replacement. That is the ultimate. But along the way, we also want to focus on prevention. This means to delay and stop the progression of T1D in people at risk or those that are recently diagnosed. And third, the treatments, those advanced therapies, devices, and drugs that provide better control and thereby reduce the daily burden of the disease and its long-term complications. Now, to move these potentially life-changing therapies from the laboratory to the real world, the resources needed are monumental. The current cost, just to give you a sense, the current cost to bring a single product from discovery research through to commercial availability is often estimated to exceed $1 billion. It's truly a humbling reality of our world and our mission. The JDRF funds numerous clinical trials independently, in collaboration with other funding agencies, and in partnership with companies ranging from small biotechs to large pharma and device manufacturers. To date, JDRF has also helped direct more than $2 billion in funding towards T1D by advocating Congress to provide financial support to the National Institutes of Health. In addition, we are tireless in our regulatory efforts. For example, we engage with the Food and Drug Administration and other agencies. We play an active and leading role in ensuring the coverage for novel therapies in order to get insurance coverage and reimbursement for those who are stepping up and adopting these novel therapies. Lastly, JDRF works to educate the T1D community on the large, and this is education that spans the adoption of improved therapies that result in better outcomes near-term and long-term for people living with T1D and their families. So while we've been very successful at moving innovative research into the pipeline, our current revenues are simply not sufficient to accelerate the many potential transformative therapies that are in the pipeline into the hands of people waiting on their arrival. As someone somewhere once said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So we're making unprecedented strides on the clinical and research arenas. The scientific progress on the life-changing breakthroughs on the horizon have never been more exciting and promising for the T1D community. Yet, the resources needed to turn these into real solutions are also unprecedented. For JDRF as an organization, this means constantly challenging ourselves to raise the bar to secure those funds needed, and the need to prioritize our people and organizational culture, not just transform our business systems and processes. So in 2016, we intentionally embarked on a strategy to thoughtfully overhaul the way in which we focused on people and the culture inside the organization. This meant rethinking our employee feedback and engagement process and to leverage it to build a culture that's stronger, more innovative, and committed to continuous improvement and high performance. Now, I don't think I need to waste anyone's time on this call here today by calling out the research data on the state of engagement and the gaps, no matter which organization, or to even make a business case for focusing on culture and engagement to truly deliver transformational results in an organization, right? No matter what source you pick up, whether it's Gallup, Deloitte, Great Places to Work, CEB, now Gartner, just to name a few. Study after study is telling us teams with high employee engagement rates are more productive. Employees with higher engagement are more likely to self-report feeling excellent about their workplace performance. Increasing workplace engagement can result in big profits per employee per year for any organization. Customer retention increases when you have highly engaged employees. Low employee engagement rates lead to what? Lower productivity, lower profits, lower job growth, lower growth of shares over time. We can go on and on. So we know the data. But as Laszlo Bock of Google fame likes to say, and I quote, employee engagement is one of those dark arts that's hard to track, but important to measure. Productivity, retention, and morale are all directly tied to how people feel or don't feel at work. Unquote. So in addition, I'll add that the work of engagement in any organization is never truly done. It's a journey, not a destination. In that spirit, I want to share the journey that we've been taking in JDRF. My goal is to be super transparent with you about where we've been and what lies ahead for us, share the why and the what behind our decisions, and offer our successes and learnings along the way, because we've only just begun, and there's a long way ahead of us. But before we get to that, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about our audience today. I've got 2 polling questions. I want to know a little bit more about you. So these are intended to understand you better. So the first question really is about whether or not you have a personal connection to diabetes, either type 1 or type 2. So I'm going to open the poll. Go ahead and answer. I'm surprised truly by the last answer about neither do I have nor do I know anyone with any type of diabetes. I haven't met such a person yet. So I would love to know who you are, and but this is good data. So you can see that almost all of us across this world today, you can do this poll anywhere, you will find that diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2, comes close to many, many people in this world and is a factor in our lives. So that makes the work that we do at JDRF so much more urgent and critical, and that's where we take a lot of our pride as an organization. So another quick question, and this I want to know what brought you here today. What is the curiosity? So you're here because your organization is currently in a culture transformation as part of a business transformation, and you want to learn more what others are doing. You are in a transformation, and you want to know how to get started. You're here not because you're in a transformation, but it's interesting. You'd like to learn new things. And you're somebody who partners and helps people with employee engagement and culture. You're perhaps a consultant or a thought leader. Or you're here because. All right, fantastic. Look at the data. I'm not surprised. Almost every organization is experiencing some kind of a transformation. We live in the world of constant change. And so most of us, and if you're in the world of organization effectiveness, this is probably one of the biggest things you're working in. So thank you for sharing. This really helps me see who's on the other side and who am I speaking with. So thank you for engaging. And someone who's here just because, enjoy. Thank you for being here. Okay, so earlier I spent some time sharing our vision with you, our plan to deliver on that mission using those 3 focus areas of cure, prevent, and treat. And within that context, I'd like to now share this journey with respect to culture, where we believe our culture really needs to evolve as the business evolves. I don't think anybody would deny or disagree with that notion that culture is always evolving and must be a focus area on any transformation journey. Culture, as we know, is the bedrock and foundation. in any organization, and much like any other organization, we at JDRF have seen our culture evolve through our 50-year lifespan, sometimes intentionally and sometimes organically. It's symptomatic in the priorities we've been making, the habits we have rewarded, and the systems and processes we have nurtured along the way. Our culture is one of deeply passionate and purpose-driven staff and volunteers that inspire each other every day with a relentless focus on the mission. The 24/7, 365 nature of the disease inspires a level of commitment that most other organizations can only dream of. Yet, it takes a toll. Burnout and high turnover are the two most obvious outcomes that we see in our culture. With an unequal balance between focus on mission and focus on internal culture, employee morale has suffered, and consequently, there's a toll on productivity and performance. So as in any other, as we set out to reimagine our internal organizational landscape with a higher level of engagement and productivity, we embarked on the following approach with these key components that you're seeing on the slide. So I will speak to these components first at a high level to describe our strategy. In later slides, I'll go deeper into each and talk more about the tactics involved at every stage. So the first piece in our strategy was to understand status quo. Our existing approach so far till that point had been to conduct a climate survey every 15 to 18 months. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, right? This would take months of analysis, yield 50-page plus insights and a set of recommendations that came from a third party, and it would take us equally as long to get any action going in response to those recommendations inside the organizations. And guess what? By that time, 1/3 of the organization would have turned over based on how high an attrition rate we had. So we knew this had to change. The insights from these surveys presented a clear risk if we use them to launch our culture change journey. So we took a strategic decision to move into a smarter approach, one of continuous listening, to understand the 3 pillars of employee engagement. First, how connected our staff felt to the organization, their managers, and their peers. Second, how committed they were to the mission and success of the organization. And third, how capable they felt to deliver on expectations of their roles. The goal was to use the insights from the data to understand both our strengths as well as our opportunities, and really determine the behaviors that were at risk of negatively impacting the success of all of our other business transformations. These would help us shape and articulate a cultural aspiration with few critical behaviors aligned with business objectives. As in any other strategic organizational work, we secured executive sponsorship at the top level upfront and helped leaders translate the aspiration into business priorities. For full commitment and success of this approach, the middle and frontline leaders had to be bought into the game and empowered. But most importantly, they had to be supported, one leader at a time, in a way that helped them embrace the team's engagement data, be comfortable with the frequent feedback and insights, engage their staff in follow-up conversations needed, and then to commit to taking action on that feedback. I'm sure this component is by far of most interest to you if you're like me in the trenches doing the work. I promise I'll add more color to this as we go. Additionally, don't hold back your questions. I look forward to them at the end and then learn from you. Then there was the work to align metrics and talent processes. What gets measured gets done, right? So we defined a scorecard, and engagement became a business metric at the CEO level. And from there, it cascaded to all levels below. So like I said earlier, the work on engagement is never done, right? It's a process of continuously engaging key stakeholders to determine what is important to ask, then ask it listen, and act on that feedback. It means tracking key parameters and behaviors over time for their directional trends and engage the organization to grapple with those complex cultural challenges that constantly reveal themselves in the data and insights and the feedback from the staff. It also means constantly monitoring other trends like turnover and retention, and then most importantly, business performance, because we know they're all correlated, and that's where you know things are working or not. And then also finally to create a recognition strategy that rewards both engagement and performance. All right, now that I've shared the high-level strategy and approach, the 50,000 feet view with you, let's break it down into tactics at every step. So when we went shopping for that smart platform, one that would help a small organization like ours to be self-sufficient as possible in the strategy, we really don't have the resources to do a lot of work here. We needed something that would give us all the capabilities. Glint was a clear winner. The artificial intelligence engine behind the natural language processing capabilities were just what we needed. The visually intuitive real-time dashboards, benchmarks, question library, action-taking resources, and guidance for managers and team leads were love at first sight. I'm not kidding. The platform was easy, therefore, to sell to our sponsors and get their buy-in. Now, we still had to sell some skeptic stakeholders on the need to pulse more than once a year. The big question was why quarterly? Why is it not enough to do once a year or twice a year? Why quarterly? I'm amazed at how those conversations or concerns resurface every now and then, even when we are ready to launch our 7th pulse next week. So as soon as we deployed our first pulse, the top leaders were immediately drawn into the real-time analytics and insights into our culture. In addition to the Glint normalized questions, we asked our staff specifically about what's getting in the way, what we should stop doing, and we should start doing. This revealed a wealth of insights, specifically gaps and power differentials across the organization. The data reaffirmed our strengths, and the candid responses from our staff really gave us a baseline to work with. That's followed by some key actions on our side. We created a communication strategy to share those results back with the staff. This included the CEO response memos to all staff, highlighting the key findings of the survey and the insights into our culture. We also took a broader education campaign for all staff to help them trust the tool and the strategy, understand the why, understand the survey methodology, confidentiality parameters, manager dashboards, giving them visibility to what their managers can and cannot see, all in the spirit of building trust and confidence in the tool and the strategy. In hindsight, I truly believe that doing the education of the broader organization after the first survey, not before, put us in a better position to showcase the full potential of the tool and the strategy. And that helped us get greater buy-in and quicker buy-in. I truly believe if we had done it earlier, we would have been talking about a hypothetical, right? But then when we had the data, we had the tool, we had the dashboards, it was much easier to get people to embrace both the strategy and the tool. Now, our first couple of surveys validated certain strong cultural opportunities that directly helped us define the future state, the aspiration, the cultural aspiration, what we needed to be to positively impact our ability to deliver more funds to mission. We narrowed it down to 3 pillars to inspire greater engagement and deliver higher performance. As you can see on the slide, they focus on stretching ourselves, being accountable for our contribution, and breaking down internal silos. We decided these were the three areas we were going to define an aspirational culture and work actively towards it in what lies ahead of us. So these three pillars have since influenced business priorities and performance criteria for the fiscal cycles of 2017 and 2018. When leaders at the top and the middle had their own dashboards and analysis at their fingertips, it was easier to engage them in a follow-up conversation. While buy-in is never guaranteed, it did make it easier in many ways with those tools at hand. Now, when change is implemented top-down, as in our case, we know where to expect bottlenecks and resistance. It's change management 101. It's in the organizational structures down the chain, right? We knew we would have to support one leader at a time. We partnered with our HR business partners to engage each leader in their client groups and gave them full support needed to embrace the dashboards, the insights, and help them trigger those follow-up conversations with their teams. It's still a work in progress in some parts of the organization today. We can't honestly state that we have 100% buy-in. One thing is for sure, and this is really important. Strong leaders embrace this to continuously improve their leadership impact and engagement of their teams. They're all in. Weaker leaders, on the other hand, are less forthcoming and find a way to dismiss the value of the strategy and the tool. And these are also the same leaders who have seen significant attrition on their teams during this journey. And the beauty of that is that in most of these cases, Glint had predicted attrition with alerts on their teams. So we continue to use the tool to help managers see these connections and influence them. Our biggest win here to date is our CEO. He's been instrumental in shaping the conversation about ownership of engagement. Where does the accountability for engagement truly lie? Which is at the local level. In that pivotal relationship each staff has with his or her manager and at the team level. While there will always be some cultural components that can only be addressed at the enterprise level, no doubt, the majority of engagement issues are best influenced at that granular level. Again, whenever leaders are owning engagement of their own teams, we are seeing significant positive movements on all of our high impact drivers. These teams are also delivering strong performance. When we coach leaders, we help them be comfortable with the fact that while they may not be able to act on every feedback and every suggestion the team is giving them, what is critical is to share the insights back with their team after a survey and then engage them in a conversation on solutions. And most critically, empower the team to take action. This energizes the staff to create the workplace culture they want to come to every day. In some instances, employees have also taken ownership on their own engagement and then have formed task forces with very specific focus areas. Some task forces and working groups have emerged voluntarily. Others have been initiated by leaders, inviting volunteers on these task forces. So we've got various models that have emerged on this journey and continue to play a big role in how we all talk about engagement today. To speak to the alignment of talent and performance. So ESAT, which is the key employee engagement metric on the Glint system, which stands for employee satisfaction, is now being factored into leader performance. So we recognize the risk entailed here. So we are stepping into this carefully. We are looking at directional trends rather than specific numbers and targets in evaluating and factoring in ESAT on a leader's performance. We are also in the process of operationalizing our values and defining leadership models and behaviors for the organization. The engagement data and insights are all flowing into this work. We've used the insights to boost our onboarding programs and use the pulses for targeted feedback on new hire experience. Now, in this journey, by far the biggest challenge is the agility. The agility needed to act on insights quickly in a manner that's easily perceptible to staff. This is where we have to do our most significant work. Agility is not our current strength that we can leverage confidently. In our post-survey follow-ups, we own the insights and are honest about what we can and what we cannot change at any given point. I can't venture that every staff appreciates this. After all, folks want leaders to fix problems. But we are committing ourselves to use targeted questions to influence and then measure desired changes in leadership habits aligned with our cultural aspiration with those three key pillars of stretching, accountability, and collaboration. We're also redesigning performance management processes. For example, bringing in continuous feedback and coaching from managers, regular one-on-ones, goals calibration during quarterly check-ins, etc. So once we get traction on this side, on the performance management side, the directional trends on these components will further factor into leader performance and evaluation along with business results. So again, we are on a marathon journey here. And on this slide, I've tried to capture the highlights. So we continue to get better, right? So as you can see, we are seeing some key improvements in KPIs related to revenue over the last couple of years on this journey. Revenue is up by 20%. ESAT has gone up by 5 points at the enterprise level. Retention is not moving as fast as we would like it, but that's a complex area to impact because there's so many other factors that go into retention and stemming our attrition. All of our high impact drivers are trending positive in the right direction. So overall, it's a good picture that is reinforcing our strategy and telling us that we are on the right path and we should continue. Our quarterly pulses have become a strategic tool, both for communicating what's important and then getting feedback on those important things. Every question is an opportunity to reemphasize behaviors and values and get a pulse of how we are doing on those behaviors and values. And employee engagement is being embraced more and more as local leadership agenda at the team level, as I mentioned earlier, and that is all positive. Now, in the work that lies ahead, where we are heading, there are 4 key things to highlight here. We have to, as an organization, get better at action taking, right? This is critical. This is where it all hinges. And the act of seeking feedback from staff should yield in things getting better, visibly better. And that's our goal. So on this journey, we'll be paying a lot of focus on taking action in response to feedback. We also have to continue aligning programs, right? So like I talked about aligning with our performance management and other programs, specifically everything talent related must align with this because that's where the closest ties are. We must also continuously refresh the strategy. What I mean by that is, in any long-term, long-haul program like this, it's the most logical thing to do. Why? Because you can quickly have people disengaging if it is more of the same. So we are recognizing that for our leaders and staff to stay energized on this agenda, we'll need to keep it fresh. And our current thinking is that there is a certain risk of getting stale if we have a singular long-term focus on the ESAT, because that is a harder number to move, and that can be quickly uninspiring and probably disengage leaders if it doesn't yield expected results. So if they're expecting big movements, which we see in smaller teams, but not at the enterprise level, this can quickly become disengaging. So what we need to do is shift our focus on certain high-impact drivers. And what that will help us do is help us take one or two drivers for a certain period of time and focus the attention of the entire enterprise on that. And this will also give us the ability to create stronger action plans. Because when you're trying to act on everything, it's a recipe for failure. But if you pick one or two targeted drivers, you have the ability to act on it much more intentionally with higher impact. And then super important for us is to include a recognition strategy in that to reward progress and to be appreciative of every step and improvement that we see. And lastly, grow with the platform. We are really excited about what Glint is doing with the platform and where it's headed. The newer capabilities that have recently been unveiled, we're looking forward to getting better understanding of those cross-program intelligence that we can use to improve the employee experience across the life cycle. This means starting from onboarding to everything else till an employee exits the organization. How can we integrate the data and get insights, intelligent insights across all those programs using these capabilities? So we are super excited about that. So that in a nutshell is where we are and where we are headed. Hopefully this was helpful. So this brings me to the end of my canned presentation and my talking points. And I'd like to now open it up to Q&A.
Thanks, Madhuri. We'll turn to audience questions in just a moment. SHRM thanks today's program sponsors, Glint, for helping make today's webcast available to the HR community. Glint is the people success platform that leverages real-time people data to help global organizations increase employee engagement, develop their people, and improve results. Leading brands leverage Glint's unique combination of intuitive design, sophisticated analytics, and actionable intelligence to help employees be happier and more successful at work. For more information, please visit glintinc.com. Okay, now let's turn to audience questions. What are some examples of high-impact drivers you focus on and change up to keep things fresh?
Great question. Like I said earlier on, when we first started this journey, we got insights. We used the normed questions in the Glint database that have proven to have high impact on employee engagement. And after a couple of pulses, we started to see the analytics behind, and the system gave us strong insights into which were our high impact drivers, strengths, and weaknesses. So to give you an example, there's a couple that we are focusing this year that we have isolated. Last year, we recognized that a big gap in our culture was staff feeling appreciated for their contributions, appreciated for their the work they were doing. So we were not very active in the way we appreciated contributions. So that was identified as a gap, and a lot of good work was done. We believe we've just gotten started, so that is going to continue. This means making recognition a high agenda at the top level of the organization. This means focus on recognition continuously. We've also partnered with Reflective, if you're aware of those, that organization, they are a performance management platform. They have a real-time recognition wall. So we unveiled that, and that went viral. People loved it. They still love it. We have revamped our, enterprise level awards on how we recognize performance and effort and behaviors. So what we are looking at when we are looking at a recognition, we are looking at both business performance as well as employee engagement. And that is that kind of combination. It's not one or the other, it's both, right? Because we recognize the correlation is strong. So recognition is an area of strong focus for us. And the other piece is empowerment. That is how much people feel they have the ability to influence their own work, right? We do have pockets across the organization where the culture is one of micromanaging work. And so we're doing a bunch of different things, both bringing skills and tools for leaders so that they can step back and not be, break their micromanagement habits, as well as other things that we need to do to empower. Now, this is still a work in progress. We just decided to make empowerment a focus of what is happening now is the conversations as to what are the actions needed here. Beyond just educating managers and giving them the tools to be more of coaches, what else do we need to do? So that's an ongoing. So I hope that helps. But that's how we're thinking through this. So we picked these two areas and we're putting all our energy behind it.
An audience member asks, how much time would you recommend to implement an engagement, communication, and recognition strategy?
Wow. I really don't know. I think we are going to discover that ourselves. But I truly am of the school of the thought that it's ongoing. I think it evolves in maturity. So it probably looks different as you go on that maturity curve on engagement and culture. But I don't think it really has a lifespan or a shelf life, if that's what you were asking.
Another audience member asks, in your opinion, what is the most important factor in launching a successful organizational cultural change?
The most important, it has to be on the agenda of the CEO, the top leader of the organization. There has to be that belief there that culture is the key lever to high performance, that no other transformation can yield the results if the culture is not aligned. We've all heard the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? It is truly true. I think I'm a strong believer in what that implies and what that tells us about the importance of culture. And it cannot really succeed, I believe, not just based on my experience here at JDRF, but in my previous experiences and in all the case studies and literature that I read, that it has to be a business agenda. It cannot be an HR agenda. It cannot be a learning agenda. It has to be a CEO agenda. And the CEO's commitment and buy-in is the single factor that is going to influence all your success down the line. We've seen that ourselves the moment our CEO was bought in. I mean, I think as I joined the organization in 2016, all the conversations that were happening made me already believe that he was a believer. But to get his buy-in into a strategy was the work that we had to do. Why this way? Why not another way was what we were debating and back and forth. And why did we need smart analytics? Why was the old approach of those surveys once every 15, 18 months? Why was that no longer relevant was the conversation. But his buy-in is something that we already always had because he's a believer. So for us, that's been a game changer. I don't think we would have made progress without it.
This is piggybacking on that previous question a little bit, but and you might have just described it there, but an audience member wants to know what successful strategies you've used to help resistant leaders get their buy-in. Is it that, kind of just, hey, this is not the way we should be doing it. Look at these analytics. Look at what we've done previously.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's obviously something that you used? Is that your go-to move, or do you have other thoughts on how to get resistant leaders to buy in?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge in any change journey. No matter whether it's a system or process or culture, it's getting, and especially I've seen that at the middle manager level, that's where a lot of the inertia is, because they're kind of caught in a sandwich. And so for those, I think some of the key things that we've been using is being relentless in helping them see the power of the tool. So like I said earlier, for us, the Glint dashboards, and for that to give them their own dashboard with their own insights, and having the power to then shape the conversation, we were relentless in trying to socialize them to those action-taking resources that Glint has been curating in their platform. They're priceless. They take you step by step through, okay, so this is an area of concern. This is how you trigger a conversation. These are the questions you ask your staff. I mean, it couldn't get more prescriptive and easier than that. So that helped a lot of our managers. The other pieces was really, since this was a top-down initiative, the consistent messaging from the top leaders that this is important. And that our CEO has a very interesting and very enduring communication style where he appeals for buy-in from his direct reports and others. It's not a command and control style. He truly tries to inspire them to bring them on board, and that plays a big role in how they feel they're being forced into it or being invited into it, right? So him inviting them into it, us helping managers with tools and resources and education. Now, I'll tell you, the biggest pockets for resistance were managers with really low scores. They were afraid to touch the dashboard. I would have them call me and say, Madhuri, this is an indictment of my leadership style, isn't it? And so that would lead to conversations becoming comfortable. They would ignore it for a few quarters, then come on board. So I think at this stage, we have majority of the buy-in from the majority of the leaders. It's a good place to be. They're influencing each other. So now it's kind of more organic. I feel it's starting to become part of our culture, more institutionalized, although I won't say it's quite there. So the urgency expressed by the leader, resources and skills for them to feel empowered and confident to embrace this, I would say would be our key approaches to this. Our HR business partners were absolutely instrumental in driving all those conversations. And then, you know what, we also threw in a little bit of competition, to be truly honest. I promised you all that I'd be super candid and transparent up front. So we do believe in healthy competition. So when the surveys go out, we typically open them for 2 weeks. Part of what I do is every few days I will go in, even though the Glint dashboards are real time and they come alive as soon as the lowest threshold is met. So managers can go in anytime and see the data and see how it's building up. I run reports, I download completion rates, and I email them to everybody, make them public. And that kind of sort of helps generate a competition on response rates. The argument that I've been making, and I truly believe that we have to get 80% of or above response rate on these surveys every time, because otherwise the data is really not truly representative. And so we try to drive these completion rates above 80%. The staff don't resist. It's just that they have to find time to do it. So the managers then play and urge their team, hey, I'm looking forward to your feedback. We've been giving them some talking points on how to talk to their team without sounding like, hey, you need to go fill the survey, I need your feedback, but how do you invite them? So we've created some talking points for them to make the case of why their response is important, re-emphasize, give them the language to re-emphasize confidentiality, to keep building their trust. So we do that kind of work at the back end to sort of create a culture. And the feedback on this, earlier we were kind of tentative on this. We wanted to make sure, but the feedback is positive for so far. So we've been doing that as well as part of our game plan, in the spirit of being completely transparent.
How often should employee engagement be measured formally? And then I guess conversely, how often are you actually sending engagement surveys to your employees?
So we do quarterly. We've been doing quarterly since January of 2017 when we did our first pulse. Like I shared with you earlier, the debate of why quarterly, just doesn't die. It keeps resurfacing. Just the other day, I was on a call with my working group where we were designing the survey that's opening up next week. The feedback I got was, I love this tool. You can do it 6 times a year, 8 times a year. It's really helped me move the needle on my leadership and and the engagement of my team. So, the strong leaders love it. They're fine with the frequency. So we are sticking with it for now. It's quarterly pulses. I don't know what's the right one. I really don't know. A lot of it has to do with how quickly you can act on the data. So I wouldn't take on something like monthly or daily pulses like some organizations have started if you don't have the ability to be able to respond to them in a timely manner, because otherwise there's no point. If you can't act on it, don't ask. Don't do a survey. That's what I would recommend.
What are you doing for your recognition program?
Recognition program. Good question. So like I said, we are marrying performance and engagement together into the things we want to reward. It's a work in progress. One thing that we've done is, I didn't talk about our structure much, how we're organized, but we're a fairly distributed organization. We have more than 70 chapters out across the U.S., and these chapters are boots and feet on the ground that do the fundraising work. So we have a recognition strategy that we've had for high performance, revenue generated in these chapters. So what we've now done is evolve that recognition strategy to include engagement. So it's just not business performance, it's about engagement scores in those teams that are factoring into that recognition strategy. We are also moving to more of being, appreciative in real time. I think that's been a big shift for us, is helping people recognize that being appreciative on a daily basis is much more impactful than those big awards. And this is validated by research. People will tell you, I'd rather get a thank you and an appreciation from my manager every now and then rather than a big reward, even a monetary reward at the end of the year. So reflective, the recognition wall that we use has made a big shift in helping us be appreciative every day. It has an Outlook plugin that reminds you and tells you, hey, you haven't sent feedback to someone in like last 10 days, and then forces you to think about who's done something that you want to, send a thank you note to. And you can choose to make it public or private. So using those kind of tools, I think in the long run, the ones, the appeal of the new and shiny dies away, I believe will help us drive a cultural change for which we won't need tools later. It'll become kind of the way we do things here. And that's the whole point of a culture change, right? You want to build new habits that will sustain and endure long term. So those are some of the things that we are doing. More to come. This is an area of focus for us.
And we will close with this question. Did your organization form an employee engagement committee? And if not, would you recommend that as a strategy for getting this going?
Absolutely. Committees are never a bad thing. I think they are very effective. If they're set up correctly, they shouldn't be forced. If they're voluntarily and organically what staff want to do without feeling compelled to do or being asked to do, or voluntold to do, then I think they are a really good way to address issues and take action, right? We've noticed that in our work, these task forces are much more capable of going back to employees in their networks, in their peers, and digging into the data and getting to understand the why of things, right? Why somebody is unhappy, why things are not working, why they want to change. And when they engage in that conversation, they really can get the data that sometimes leader doesn't come up to leaders and will not be articulated in the presence of leaders. So in that spirit, they're a good thing. I encourage it. I'm going to stop here because I recognize we're going over time.
Before we sign off, a couple of thanks. First to our presenter, Madhuri Kumar from JDRF. Thank you for your insight you shared today, and we want to thank our audience for joining us and for choosing SHRM for HR Webcasts. That concludes today's program.
Thank you so much for having me.